For over half a century, Canada has been a world leader in the production, use, and development of life-saving medical isotopes. The world is counting on Canada to expand this leadership role to support the diagnosis and treatment of cancer, ensuring medical equipment is safe for use, and to tackle some of our greatest challenges in health sciences. Welcome to the Canadian Nuclear Isotope Council's Isotopes for Hope podcast with your host, James Scongack, Chair of the CNIC. In this series, we interview Canadian leaders who are making a difference every day. We hope you enjoy this episode of the Isotopes for Hope podcast.
Okay, I'm really excited today on our Isotopes for Hope podcast to have a very special guest, somebody that when we launched this podcast, was absolutely a must-have person, and that's Steffen Schuster. Steffen is the Chief Executive Officer of ITM, and just an amazing global leader in the area of radiopharmaceuticals, both Steffen as an individual leader, but also ITM as a company. He has been the president and CEO of ITM since December of 2011. And during his leadership at ITM, he's greatly expanded the development and production of medical radioisotopes, radiopharmaceuticals internationally, and has led ITM from a pure radioisotope manufacturer to a global biotechnology and radiopharmaceutical company. He's been involved throughout his tenure at ITM in building out a lot of very unique and innovative partnerships. From a Canadian perspective, very strong partnerships with Chalk River National Labs, a real great company and organization here in Canada. A strong partnership between Bruce Power and IsoGen, which consists of Framatome and Kinetrix. And internationally, if you follow Steffen on LinkedIn or follow his communications, there's not a part of the world that he is not out raising capital, advancing development. But in particular, I do want to recognize his success in including a round of debt financing that was successfully completed from the European Investment Bank. And as part of ITM's growth, not only a major growth in terms of the expertise within the organization, but their growth in Germany and the US, and most importantly, for the purpose of this podcast, the partnership in Canada. So, Steffen, I'm absolutely thrilled you're here, and thanks very much for joining us today.
Many thanks for having me, James.
So, Steffen, you've been at this a long time, and it obviously, and we'll talk a bit about this, it's a really exciting time for radiopharmaceuticals, but it wasn't always like that. Back in 2011, ITM was a very different company from the company that you lead today. Can you maybe just share with us the growth of ITM? And I'm sure 13 years has gone by quite quickly, but just really how ITM has grown over that 13 years. But most importantly, how has the market also developed during that time?
Right. Many thanks, James. And first of all, many thanks for having me here. It's a true pleasure. And I mean, making business with you, James, Bruce Power, and all these other great parties in Canada is a great pleasure to me. So who have we been like, in 2011? The company was a small company, 23 people when I joined. We were at the beginning of making radioisotopes, and the whole market conditions were very negative towards radiopharmaceuticals. There was one therapy since the 1950s. There were some diagnostics, but everybody had the impression nothing's really going on there. And that was also the feel when I joined the company. I was basically coming to this company because I believed strongly in the success of radiopharmaceuticals. Over time, we figured that the market has changed tremendously. So there was the development of some great targeting molecules for cancer indications that have hit many people very badly. So there's prostate cancer, there are great drugs underway, neuroendocrine tumors, great drugs underway. And, this has made the whole industry develop very nicely. We started back then as a pure radioisotope manufacturer at the beginning. Right now, we are a company of 650 people. We do two things. We continue to manufacture radioisotopes at scale. And also what we do is we develop drugs clinically. to the benefit of the patients. And we strongly believe in the positive impact of these drugs to the cancer patients. And this is why our claim basically is, a passion for precision, and we are dedicated to giving cancer patients better answers than maybe.
So, Steffen, if you think about this from a patient's perspective, and if we sort of get our crystal ball out, and we think about where the world of radiopharmaceuticals will be, let's say 10 years from now, again, starting with that patient perspective, what will be different for patients as the radiopharmaceutical sector continues to innovate and grow and really along this trajectory? Like, where do you think we're going to be in 10 years, and what's that going to mean for people?
So I would say right now, there are a few therapies out which have gotten approval, so which, can be sold in the marketplace, which patients can get. That's for a few indications. In 10 years from now, I think many, many patients, hundreds of thousands, millions of patients will benefit from these therapies. All of us, the whole biotech pharma industry is working hard on developing these drugs. And all, it's a full question of the whole value chain that needs to follow, because normal drugs, you manufacture them, you take a pill or you get injection, very simple. But radiopharmaceuticals are complex. And so it's not only necessary to develop these drugs clinically, but it also means that on the manufacturing side, radioisotopes, bringing the radioisotope together with the targeting molecule, make a drug, and then the logistical challenges, bring this to the patient. This is complex, but, we are working hard to get this done. So from the patient perspective, cancer patients, in 10 years from now, will have a variety of great radiopharmaceutical drugs which can help them if they get in this very unfortunate situation of getting cancer.
And Steffen, that's really exciting, right? And we, I always like to refer to a theranostic as a heat-seeking missile. And it's amazing, the growth, but what was even more amazing is just the outcomes and the improved outcomes for people. And obviously your leadership is driving that and making a real profound difference in people's lives. And I want to shift and talk a little bit about Canada. So you are a global company, global investors, global footprint. You have partnerships with global pharmaceutical companies. Obviously, you have made some important decisions in terms of prioritizing certain partnerships in Canada. I talked about a couple of them with CNL. Obviously, there's the partnership with Bruce Power and IsoGen in the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation. Can you talk about, you have a lot of options around the world. You could go anywhere. And what was it about the either the organizations in Canada or the Canadian market, or what the Canadian supply chain brought to the table that led you to want to really, I think, establish some very foundational partnerships for the success of ITM, and it's a two-way success street by choosing these Canadian companies?
I think it's a combination of things in Canada. First of all, there is a very positive view on everything which is nuclear in Canada. So basically, whether it's nuclear energy, whether it's, medical isotopes. So I would say there's a very positive support from all parties there. That's the first thing. Then I think there is also, a very research-friendly atmosphere. People are very open for research, very good universities also, which help. And then thirdly, there are these companies, state-owned or private companies, which do a wonderful job. Great people, doing great things in the field of nuclear medicine, of radioisotopes, and of nuclear energy and other things. So really, I think Canada is a wonderful country when you do want to do something with regard to medical isotopes, because there's so many good groups of people in such a positive spirit with regard to medical isotopes.
And Steffen, what's very clear to me in terms of your partnerships here in Canada is there's really two isotopes that you and the team at ITM have focused on. Obviously, lutetium-177, and you talked about that, the uses with that, and also actinium-225. Can you talk a little bit about, if we sort of think about these isotopes, maybe walk people through, why were those the isotopes of focus? what do they complement each other with? How should we think about this? I sort of look at it like you're getting all the tools in the toolbox to help fight cancer, and you're trying to pick the best tools. Can you just sort of walk us through your thoughts on lutetium, actinium, and why has that been the focus of ITM and your partnerships here in Canada?
So that's a very good question. It's a complex question. I don't want to get too scientific here. So what I want to say is, there are some properties with lutetium, which is a beta emitter, which has a moderate energy, but the energy can travel like 2 to 3 millimeters in the body, which is a lot. The alpha emitters, actinium-225 is an alpha emitter. The alpha emitters have, a very high energy, have a very low range. They travel like 2 to 3 cell diameters in the body. And, that there are different situations, different cancer types, different stages. And in the one case, it's better to use a beta emitter. In the other case, it's better to use an alpha emitter. Now, why are we using these beta emitters and these alpha emitters? I think, lutetium is great. It's got a half-life of roughly a week, and actinium has a half-life of roughly 10 days. And also the decay chain of these radioisotopes is important to understand, so because you want to have a decay chain that is also well tolerated by the tissue. So there are many different parameters. Again, it's complex, it's difficult, but we think that with these two radioisotopes, we can cover most of the disease in a very effective way when we find the right targeting molecule. I think there will be other radioisotopes in future as well that will play a role, but I think for the next 10 years or so, I'm pretty sure that, by far most of the cancer indications that will be addressed by using radiopharmaceuticals will take either lutetium-177, NCA, that's the clean form that we do, and actinium-225.
No, that's really helpful. And so obviously here in Canada, we have a unique ability, and it's something we've worked together on to develop this supply. And I only see that supply expanding. You and the team at ITM, Steffen, have had to make some very important investments around the world to really be able to take the isotopes that we produce here in Canada and process it and get it to patients in various markets. Can you sort of walk us through what that's meant for your organization, and what you've built out to date, and what you will continue to build out to really be able to turn the supply into a product that can really benefit a patient at the end of the day?
Yeah, let me start with lutetium. Lutetium, is a radioisotope. First, you need a raw material, which is difficult to get. And what we do, we ship this raw material to our friends of Bruce Power. It gets irradiated there with the neutrons from the reactor. Then we get it back, and we have built 2 large manufacturing sites where we do the whole purification process, and where we basically do everything to ship it to the patient. So it's, but build, nuclear equipment for medical isotopes is really something which is, hard to do. You marry 2 worlds, the world of radiopharmaceuticals or for pharmaceuticals and the world of radiation safety, and that's complex and expensive. So what we do is we have to invest massively into infrastructure to do so. When it comes to actinium, it's a similar thing. You need a cyclotron. You also irradiate a raw material there in a cyclotron, and then you have also the purification step, and then you have to basically, also ship it to your patients. It's both very, very cost intensive. You need a lot of money, a lot of investments, and you have to think very hard through all the steps that are necessary to do so, because when you handle this material, you have to be absolutely sure that you do it right.
No, absolutely. And when if I look at the growth of ITM and the growth of really demand for these isotopes, certainly the pandemic was a very challenging period for a lot of sectors across the world. ITM continued to, working with your partners, really progress successfully during the pandemic. Can you sort of talk a little bit about what impact the pandemic had on sort of the broader radiopharmaceutical market, the supply chain, and really what you did as an organization to keep moving forward, and what was a very challenging period?
Yeah, that's a very good question, James. And so basically, COVID hit everybody hard, right? So it was very unexpected, a new situation. And what we do is logistically, most of the shipments that we bring to our patients, we use passenger planes for. Now, in the COVID days, as everybody knows, most of the passenger planes were grounded. So, I mean, luckily, we managed early enough to reserve cargo planes instead. So basically, we continue to supply our patients by, just using cargo planes instead. And then we had to be very creative in finding new solution for new ways to getting there. Instead of going, for example, direct to the US, we went to Canada first and from there to the US. So it was much more complicated, but we managed to do so. The next challenge certainly was on the manufacturing side, people that could not come to the office, that could not come. And this was also something where we had to work hard. We had, separate the shifts to make sure that there's no infection from one shift to the other. So it was a lot of, organization and hard work involved to get it done. But, we managed to get through and we could continue supplying our patients as we did before. So this was a hard exercise and a hard test for the organization.
Right, and certainly very important that you were able to obviously carry out that work safely and successfully, because even though the pandemic hit, the need for patient cancer treatments did not stop, and for people that's life and death. So really, really important work. Steffen, I know a big component of your role as the CEO is raising funds, raising capital. I mean, we can't successfully advance any of this infrastructure investment you noted without really strong investors and support from the financial community. Can you talk about, and I think you were recently out in, I believe it was San Francisco, somewhere on the West Coast, talking about this at an investor conference. How is the investment community viewing radiopharmaceuticals? And when you're out there and you're talking about the ITM story, you're talking about your partnerships here in Canada. We just had recently with the Toronto Region Board of Trade and Life Sciences Ontario, the province of Ontario as an example here in Canada, has been the recipient of about $3 billion in private sector investment in life sciences, and that's just here in Ontario. And obviously isotopes are a major component of our life sciences strategy. But what are you hearing from the investment community? Obviously, maintaining that investment support so we can continue this long-term view is really important.
So I would say, when you just look at the development over time, the question that we touched at the very beginning, I mean, I used to be a venture capitalist in my earlier life. And, when I went out to raise funds to get our phase 3 trial, our first one started in 2014, it was tough. It was tough because no one believed in radiopharmaceuticals back then. Now it has changed completely with all these successes that we see. And the success means the success for the patients. So patients get treated, clinical trials demonstrate that radiopharmaceuticals are superior to the drugs that have been in the market before. It's the efficacy, which means, how well do the patients do for how long, and the safety profile, the side effects, all this. And they are just great drugs. So the investors community has understood this right now, how good these drugs are. The commercial success of the first drugs coming to market has proven this. Companies this World Investors Conference in San Francisco. So basically, big pharma has woken up and they start acquiring companies. There have been some important acquisitions, all multi-billion-dollar acquisitions, some important acquisitions lately in this field as well. So I would say the whole momentum of the investors field is very positive when we are speaking about radiopharmaceuticals.
Right, and obviously that continued investment and that we talked about the regulatory stability here in Canada, around the world, that stability, that investment climate. You're right, it's all about patients at the end. One of the first memories I have of meeting you, Steffen, is I remember, I think it was the summer of 2017. You and some of your colleagues came up to Bruce Power. We signed an MOU that day. But what strikes me as I look back at that, it seems like it was just yesterday, by the way, not 6 or 7 years ago. But at the time, you and the team at ITM, you had a very clear view as to how this was going to play out. And by and large, absent some of the normal challenges of the pandemic that have had a time impact on everything and everyone, by and large, that has played out. And I guess the question is, and maybe with a bit of a Canadian focus, obviously you've selected Canada for partnerships in Canada for a lot of great reasons you articulated. But if you're thinking about it from the point of view of what does Canada need to do better, or where should we continue to focus on, what would be your advice, right? You have the choice of selecting from dozens of companies and dozens of countries. From a Canadian perspective, what do you think we need to focus on to continue our leadership role and being an attractive partner for companies like ITM?
But I would say that the main reason why we came to Canada and took these decisions the way we did, that we want to work together with you long term, is simply because you do things right. I think this strong support for the nuclear industry, also the openness in doing business with us, we haven't found this anywhere else in the world. So I would say, if you want to have my advice, and please, it's just an advice from an outsider, just stay course. Continue what you do in that way that you do it. I mean, stay open. I mean, be so positive about, the radioisotopes manufacturing and also everything else that deals with nuclear in your country. This is very different from what we experience in our home country. There's so much more support here in Canada from your side. So really stay course, be as positive as you are in this regard, and also be as open for companies like us coming to Canada, coming from far away from Germany. And so this is really my only advice. I cannot say what you could do better because I'm really very happy with the way you're doing things.
Well, Steffen, and I think an important point that you raise is really around stability. And it's really important that we continue at our national level, federal level, provincial level. That government stability is really important because I think fundamentally, it's safe to say that in literally a life or death business, which is what we are in, you are in, stability and predictability is very important. And I know one of the things that I've always really valued in my interactions with you and ITM is the focus on quality. And I like your focus on precision because when we work together on that first delivery system that is in place for lutetium production, I think we all agreed on a principle of go slow to go fast, and predictability and quality was important. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, that the work between Bruce Power, ITM, the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, and IsoGen in its first year of operation was about 10,000 patient treatments, which is just life-changing for 10,000 people. So it's really rewarding. Well, look, Steffen, I want to thank you for your time today, your insights. I want to thank you for selecting Canada as a place that you want to do business as a global company, and also for your work in terms of expanding our outlook to the world and opening up many new doors and as you say, making a difference in the lives of patients.
I mean, thanks, James. It's a true pleasure to work with you, James, with Bruce Power, with, all the other companies we work with in Canada. It's such a pleasure for us. And, also thank you to Canada to be so open to us. So I'm looking forward to a very long-term relationship with you.
Likewise. Thanks again.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Canadian Nuclear Isotope Council Isotopes for Hope podcast with James Scongack. Please share this podcast and follow us to stay in the loop. To learn more, please visit our website at canadianisotopes.ca.